At When We're Not Hustling, we believe that seeing sex workers as full people outside of our work is an essential step towards humanizing and destigmatizing the industry and those who work within it. Help us to bring you the stories of the people behind the fantasies. When We're Not Hustling is a 501c3 fiscally sponsored nonprofit project of the Social Good Fund. Thank you for considering a tax-deductible recurring contribution. All contributions will be received through our fiscal sponsor, the Social Good Fund. You can contribute at nothustling.com. Thank you so much.
Put away the lingerie. I want to know you. Tell me more. I don't care about the news. I'd rather hear about you and see the world from your point of view. The coffee's already made, so I probably should just pull up a chair and tell me more.
Welcome to When We're Not Hustling, a podcast where sex workers talk about everything but. I'm your host, Jessie Sage. When We're Not Hustling is a weekly podcast that explores the lives and identities of sex workers outside of our work personas, our personal philosophies, ambitions, families, relationships, passions, spirituality, and so much more. We talk about our lives beyond the job, asking, what does the flexibility of sex work allow us to do, and who does it allow us to be? On this show, we learn who sex workers are outside of the work we're known for. When We're Not Hustling is an exploration of the people behind the fantasies. When We're Not Hustling is powered by Black Venom Digital. Black Venom Digital is a collaboration between myself and industry veteran Mr. Black Venom. Black Venom Digital aims to provide adult professionals and entrepreneurs with professional-grade web design, graphic design, and branding services that will inspire growth and success. At Black Venom Digital, we empower companions, creators, and entertainers with professional web design and branding. If you're looking for a new website or any other branding services and you work in the adult industry, please find out more at blackvenomdigital.com. Hello and welcome back to another episode of When We're Not Hustling. I'm your host, Jessie Sage. Today we have a very fun crossover episode with Tryst blog. So this is our first one. I hinted at it last week, and we've been running a raffle this week to celebrate our collaboration. But Tryst blog has a new reoccurring column about that called Hobby Whores, where whores are talking about their hobbies. And since that lines up very well with our show, we decided to work with them on this. So every quarter, we are going to be putting out an episode with somebody who has written for the blog and talking about the same topic. And this is our first one. So today we're going to be talking to Lana Hart about bed rotting. So that is a very fun episode. I actually didn't know what bed rotting was when Tryst first brought it up because I didn't know that term, but it basically means lying in bed and taking care of yourself. So I do know what that is. And it was very fun to talk about why we should justify doing that in our lives. For those of you who've been following us on socials and listened to the episode last week, you know that we've been running a raffle. We are drawing a winner today and we will announce it on socials. So please go to Twitter and Instagram at Not Hustling Pod to see who won the box of things that you can do in bed. And I am not going to tell you what's in the box. That will be a surprise. I appreciate everybody who's participated in that, and I'm very excited to be giving away our first prize. We are going to be doing this every quarter. When we do a crossover episode, we will be doing a raffle, and we will send one listener of the show a box of stuff relevant to the episode. So next time in the first quarter of next year, we're going to be doing an episode on leather working, and we are going to be giving away the guests' leather work. So that is going to be awesome as well. So we are really excited about that. I wanted to let you know that next week we are going to be we won't have an after party next week because we're going to be putting out a longer episode, which is the recording of the live show that we did in Pittsburgh with Working Girls Press for the book launch of the Holy Hour, or the Pittsburgh-based book launch of the Holy Hour. So that's coming out next week, and we're very excited about that. But before we get to that, let's turn to our episode today. We have Lana Hart on today, and she is a stand-up comic and a sex worker and a stripper and a writer, and she is going to be talking to us about the self-care that is lying in bed and doing nothing. So let's turn to that episode. Hi, Lana.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, so you are our first crossover episode with the Hobby Horrors column. I don't know how you would call it. Over on Tryst. So our podcast has been sponsored by Tryst the whole first 2 seasons, and we just started thinking like we should do something fun that overlaps, and they started this Hobby Horrors collection of essays. And so once a quarter, and this is the first one, we're going to do a crossover episode with one of the writers and talk about what your hobby is. And this one is going to be really fun, I think, because you wrote an essay about bed rotting.
I absolutely did do that. I spent time writing an essay on bed rotting.
Can you first introduce yourself before we get into that?
Absolutely, yeah. I'm Lana Hart. I'm a sex worker, stripper, hooker, writer for Tryst. I wear many hats. I just say I wear many hats and sometimes nothing at all, but dabble in lots of things.
Yeah. And what made you write a piece on bed rotting?
So I've written for Tryst a number of times before, and they were telling me about their new series, and Hobby Horrors was one of them. And I was like, tell me more about that. And they're like, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's what horrors have hobbies, and what are they? And I was like, damn, what are my hobbies? And like, one of mine really is rotting in bed rotting, laying around, being a gremlin. And I actually think writing this piece was kind of like an exercise for me to like own that as a hobby, because like I do spend a lot of time laying around in bed, especially after doing sex work, but I struggle with like not feeling guilty about it. So I was like, I'm gonna write this essay and like talk about how it is important and crucial and like a part of the like process, so I can convince myself while I'm writing it.
No, I don't even, you don't have to convince me. I believe that. But I think there is something, especially like in our culture, of this, like we have to be doing something all day and guilty when we're not doing something. And so I actually love the idea of like pulling something like rest into the realm of like doing something. Like I think when you're saying that it's a hobby, you're saying like it's something I'm actively doing. I'm not just lying around doing nothing. So yeah, I mean, what did you like? I am a fan of the nap. Like I love any day. I don't even have to work on a particular day to like
absolutely
nap, but I love taking naps, and I always feel like there's something so I want to say that it's something that's like luxurious about it, but also it's just necessary to me. Like, I don't understand how people have full-time 9-to-5 jobs and like don't take a nap in the middle of the day. That seems so horrendous to me.
Yeah. I wonder if they would, given the option, because I feel like, we have a more flexible schedule in sex work. So like when your bed's sitting right there at 3 p.m. and you're like, I could just pass out for 2 hours. You're like, absolutely. And
seems so like all time too. Like 3 p.m. is the perfect nap time.
Yeah, siesta.
Yeah. We should have.
I have a friend, and I'm forgetting their sex worker name, and they gave it to me to use in the article, so we can cross reference on that. Ava something. But she made a really good point about like it actually kind of helped with my idea of this article about how like looking back at old like Renaissance photos of whores, like they're often like in bed, like draped and like, and you're like, it's because like we need this rest time. Like men are fucking exhausting for the most part. Most of our clients are predominantly men, or even if they're not, just like so much of our work is like a performance and like a really being on and social in a way that like you just need that. It's like charging your battery, you know?
Yeah, yeah. That's really interesting because there are so many like pictures of whores like
They're bed rotting.
they're bed rotting. Yeah, I've actually, it's funny that you say that because I found that when I started doing full service work, I was much more tired and needed a lot more off time. And it's also like much, my social battery was lower. Like I
Yeah.
have a
Yeah.
harder time socializing now than I used to because I think like, and it's not because I don't like my sessions or anything like that, but it's because like you have to be on in such a heightened way that it's like exhausting.
100%. I have had to like learn. I feel like but I think you're true. Like with like full service, there is, but before when I was just doing stripping, I was like going out after and like having like nightlife, which I think I was still like burning the candle at both ends of the stick and like being a little naive with how much energy I had to give. And like I really did. And then my social battery would be so low that I would just be like a fucking bitch, you know? And now I've had to like, you know, that I'm like 5 years in the game and I'm doing full service. I have to be like, you know, if I see a client and it's like I want to hang out when I get a drink, I'm like, I actually like really can't. Like I need to recharge and regroup. Like I'm not going to be fun and it's not going to be
Right. I tour a lot, like, and by a lot, I mean like every other weekend. Usually I like go somewhere. And I find I often have this experience where, like, especially if I go someplace like New York where I know a lot of people, I'm like, oh, I want to see the people that I know when I'm in the city. And I usually try to, but often I find that, like, especially if I have like several sessions while I'm touring, I just can't do anything else. I just like see a client, lie down, watch some reality TV, take a nap, try to like get back to like some sort of status quo before I have to like put that all back on again.
Yeah, no, it's such a like you're being so, and especially when like I think this goes for both stripping and full service, is like even like talking about social battery, like your social battery can get drained from going to a party, but when you're working, like it's on you to carry like make sure that it goes well and feels fun and like having a good time. So you can't be like, oh fuck this conversation, like I'm not enjoying this, you know, which you could do at like a party or something. Like you have to be like, no, if anything feels off, I have to make it good and bring it back. And that is very, very exhausting.
Yeah. And most men, like just in general, not even in sex work, but rely on women to like carry the social interactions and make sure that it's fluid and make sure that like I feel like a lot of the work when you're with like men is to like keep the morale up. Which is a lot
Perfect word choice.
Yeah. Keep the morale up. And yeah. Yeah. And that's you're right, because it's not like you can just check out.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, I mean, I'm talking about now, like when I go out to a bar with friends and like, and a man starts trying to talk to us for free. I'm like, absolutely not. Get out of my face. I am not on the clock.
Yeah, yeah. I notice it and I feel guilty sometimes because I'm married and and I notice that, and it's not just the work. I also have ADHD. I also have this like tendency to check out like and be in my own head when somebody's not talking about the thing that like I'm really into. And they kind of gave me a hard time the other day because they were like, you created an entire like career around everyone talking about what you want to talk about. And I'm like, oh yeah, that. That's very convenient of me so that I have something.
Making your life work for yourself.
Because why should I talk about anything else besides what I'm interested in? So when people talk about things that I'm not interested in, it's very easy for me to check out, like, and just be in my heads. And I'm a writer, and like writers tend to like spend a lot of time in their head thinking about like constructing things. And so like I just find that like that's something that you absolutely can't do when you're working, that I have to work like so hard to not do that I don't do in any of my other relationships. And so, yeah, it's a lot.
That's so interesting because I have ADHD too. The ADHD to sex worker pipeline.
Yeah.
I have had people in my life point that out of like, you tend to like dissociate and kind of like eyes glaze over when I'm talking. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry. Like I did just leave my plane. It's like, because I think, but like when I am working, I have to like lock in and make sure I don't do that. I'm like, maybe I should do that for my friends.
Yeah. I remember when I was younger, I read Maya Angelou's. And I know she's problematic in some ways, but this thing stuck out to me. She wrote in "I Know Why the Cage Bird Sings" something like, "If you only have one smile to give it to somebody that you love." And I was like, oh, that's like actually a counterintuitive thing. Like it could be super intuitive, but actually like we're programmed to be on and be like our best selves with people that we care less about and not with the people that we really love. And so I do try to think about that and incorporate that. Like, if my partner got my undivided attention in the way that my clients do, they would be stoked. But I'm not that good at it, like in my life. And yeah, so I don't know. I think that's, but getting back to the main like point is that like, actually, I think one of the things that you're saying is that in order to do that anywhere, like with your friends or with the people that you want to talk to, or when you have to, like when you're at work, you need like a lot of rest for that.
Recharge. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, kind of like it's funny because bed rotting is almost like the ultimate actual girlfriend experience, if we were being honest about it. It's like when I look disgusting and I have like a bag of Doritos and I'm like doom scrolling on my phone. I'm like, this is what you actually would be getting if I was your girlfriend. I
had a client, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but this is so funny. This was like the perfect date. We went and had dinner, and then we went back to the hotel, and then he was like, I forgot that I have to like turn in my fantasy football picks. So by like an hour from now. So how about you pretend to be my wife and you just lie there and play on your phone while I do that? And I was like, okay.
Amazing. Dream gig.
He's like, you can just ignore me like we're married. And I was like, all right, I know how to do that.
But yeah, so like, especially if you have like a long appointment, like 3 to however many hours, like an overnight or something, after I really am like dead to the world. And I'm like, especially I'm like, no man, talk to me for the next like few hours. And it really does feel like plugging yourself in, and like you can't, what's that quote of like, you can't pour from an empty cup. And like at the end of a session like that, like I truly am empty. Yeah. I'm all out, folks. Like,
I find that to me, the hardest part about overnights is not like any of the individual like interactions. It's that I can't do the things that I do to kind of like come back to myself. Like I can't check my in bed before I fall asleep, or watch my TV show, or read a book, or do the things that I kind of do to like wind down and get back into myself. And that's actually really hard.
Yeah. I remember I went on like a trip, and luckily I've never done like a solo trip with a client, but I did one with like a few other sex workers. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, I was so grateful that they were there and we like got each other through it. But I think that was one of the first most like, we were in like a beautiful tropical paradise, and like I've never been happier to see like my disgusting Brooklyn apartment when I got home. Like I was like, thank God. Like it was like the last day I was like, I have to get out of here. Wow. And like it was a great experience. Like I am really grateful for the money I made. The client is like honestly a nice guy. Like, but it was just like day 5. I was like, I need to go like fart in my bed. Like
Yeah. And it's a lot about the mental energy that you have to put into just being available. And I think, one of the things that I've thought a lot about is that there's in relationships, like in most romantic relationships, there's like a that beginning sort of like new relationship energy that requires like a lot of you, and that you get like fully enmeshed person, and then you like level out, and then you can like hang out, or you can't eat snacks in bed, you can't do like all of these things. And the hard thing about sex work is even though you may see a client for like 3 or 4 years in a row, you have to like every time you see them perform the heightened sort of.
Yeah. No, that's a really interesting point because I think naturally you do get more comfortable with like regulars, especially after like a couple years or so, but you can't fully go to like gremlin mode or like, you know,
Right.
there still has to be at least like a little bit of a performance or like keeping
the energy up,
Yeah. Yeah.
Although I have this really funny regular, and I love this about him. He's autistic, and he has that very sort of like autistic, I cannot say something that's not true, you know, regardless of what it is. And so like it was really funny. We did a duo the other day with one of my friends, and that was the first time that he had met them. And he was really excited to meet them because it was like a new person, you know. And halfway through the date, they said to my friend, or he said to my friend, yeah, Jessie and I are like in a long-term relationship. There's no fireworks, but like I'm used
Fireworks is so funny.
okay. But there was something that was kind of relieving about it. I was like, oh, nice. Okay.
You're like, no, I don't have to upkeep the fireworks that don't exist.
Yeah, he's over the fireworks. He's like, now I'm just used to you. So I'm like, okay, great.
Another beautiful thing.
Yeah. So let's get back to bed rotting. So what do you do in bed rotting? When We're Not Hustling is brought to you by Assembly 4. Assembly 4 is a collective of sex workers and technologists working to bring the overall cost of sex work down through their advertising platform, Tryst.link. They also educate clients through the Good Client Guide and provide resources and articles written by and for sex workers. Assembly 4 caters to all genders and demographics and raises funds to fight for sex worker rights and against exploitation in the sex industry. Learn more at assembly4.com. ASSEMBLYFOUR.com. Thank you for listening to When We're Not Hustling. Please remember to subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you listen to your podcasts. Doing so will help other people find us. And if you're a sex worker who wants to come on the show and talk about your life outside of work, we would love to have you. Please send an email with more information to nothustlingpod@proton.me.
So the first thing that happens is that I wake up and it's like a disgusting hour of the day. I mean, like according to other people, like it's like holy shit, it's 4 p.m. And like curtains are drawn, my money's on the floor. I mean, this is especially after like a stripping shift. Either way, I'm gonna scroll my phone immediately for so long, check all the apps and like open them multiple different times. Nothing like there's no notifications coming in at this point. And then probably my vibrator will probably be like already in bed next to me because I went to bed with it. Because after a session, I have to use my vibrator. And I use that.
Sometimes, yeah.
And then it really is going to be like a day of walking from my bed to the fridge, to the door to get my Seamless or Grubhub, and back to my bed, masturbate again. Like just getting like and then like food and drink in my bed. It's gonna get like grimier and grimier, full gremlin mode. Masturbation is like it is a big part of it.
What do you think? Do you feel like besides just like getting off, do you feel like there's something about masturbation that's especially in relationship to work that's like taking your pleasure back, or do you think
really? And I think I do get off a little bit to being like, yeah, I did that. Like, I just rocked someone's world yesterday.
I like that too. I think that's pretty normal that like, at least I experience this and I think it's relatively normal that like the more sex you have, the kind of more, it's like exercise to me in that regard. Like stop having sex or I stop exercising. I stop thinking about it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, in a mode of like having a lot of sex for whatever reason, and I'm more turned on.
I 100% agree.
Yeah.
Like sex, bed, rot, pregnancy. There's also something so nice too about just like I think there's so much pressure on us. I mean, we're called hustlers, like, to be hustling and to just like do the opposite of that,
Yeah.
like hustling at all right now.
Just chilling. Yeah. Yeah. So why do you think that you felt like you had to like defend yourself, or defend the practice, or turn it into something that seemed like a worthwhile endeavor?
Yeah, I mean, this might also be all in my own head of like being mean to myself, which I famously am. Like, I mean, it ties into like, yeah, the whole like hustler mentality. And I think that comes with like a sex worker schedule and other freelance schedules as well, where it's like you don't have set hours, so you could technically always be working, right? So even if you're not like, he's like, I could be writing right now, I could be like doing admin work right now, I could be doing something. So to be like bed rotting, it's an actual revolution. To be like, no, I'm not going to do anything. And I feel like I'm always fighting like I'm my pride in being like, yeah, fuck it, I'm not doing anything, I worked so hard last night. And then like another voice that's like, no, like you could be doing so much more, like you're wasting your time right now. But I'm trying to lean into the former, like, no, you deserve to relax.
Right. Do you have shows you like?
Yes, so many. Right before I came here, and what I have been doing in my writing recently is Selling Sunset. Do you watch it?
I watched one episode and I didn't get into it right away. Should I give
it bad?
I'm stuck in 90 Day Fiance land though. Like,
fun.
I should.
I also just binged in a 2-day sitting also The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives.
Oh, I haven't watched that. Is that good?
Yeah, it's insane.
Okay. What else do you recommend?
Again, those are all reality, and usually I'm like, or I guess like in the past, maybe it's from all the bed rotting that I've gotten more into like reality TV. But I mean,
I really like
it. I'm always a big fan of Always Sunny. That's like a like happy show to watch. Like it always makes me feel good. I just watched Sex and the City for the first time, which is like kind of crazy. Yeah. I just finished it like last week, and yeah, everyone was like, "How have you?" Because it just came on Netflix, so I think people have been watching it.
I mean, I watched it when it came out. Like I watched it in the early 2000s, and I don't think I've returned to it since then. And I heard it doesn't hold up very well.
It does and it doesn't. It's kind of crazy. It's like it is outdated. Like there's a lot of jokes that are like really problematic and cringy. But and then sometimes I'm like, wow, this was really ahead of its time. Especially that they're like women in they're by the end of the season they're like 38 to 45.
Yeah.
And they're like single and fucking and like prioritizing their pleasure, which I think was like very radical at that time. It's also interesting that Samantha was like the like non-PC one, but now through the years she kind of is more woke with what she's saying. sometimes she's very transphobic in a really upsetting way, but other things she says I'm like, yeah.
It's interesting to go back to like those old like early 2000s shows. During the pandemic I rewatched all of The Sopranos and was like, actually this show even 20 years later.
Damn, that's interesting. I will say also Sex and the City is very mean to sex workers. They're always bad about it. And it's very disappointing because it's a show about being like sex positive. And I was like, you guys are having sex with like, first of all, in my opinion, very ugly and like horrible men for free.
Yeah.
Sex workers. Because there's a whole episode where, I don't know if you remember, where Carrie is like, she has this whole conundrum because she wakes up the morning after having sex with this guy and he left an envelope on the table with money in it, which seems and she's like, should I keep the money? And Samantha is like, obviously keep the money, who gives a fuck?
Yeah.
I mean, in hindsight, I think it's because she mentioned that she likes like shoes, so he just like left money for her to go shopping. Although I think my theory is it's that, but because he seems like someone who probably hires sex workers a lot, he like knew to put it in an envelope, and that's just like leave it on the dresser. But yeah, it's just like, oh, like they like, and they say so many throwaway lines about like dead hookers and prostitutes, and it's like, you guys.
I think everybody does that though. Like that, which is not an excuse, but I feel like they're in our culture that just happens in this kind of knee jerk way that people don't even recognize.
Yeah. to this day, yeah, where people are like, oh, that's fine to talk about someone, a human being like that. And you're like, oh.
Yeah, I know. I was at a social event recently, and it was an event of everybody that was there was like queer and poly. So you would think that they would be like sex positive.
You would think, wouldn't you?
And somebody is telling a story about how she was like treated badly by her partner's mother. And then she said, yeah, and my partner's mother called me a whore. And everyone in the room was like, and I was like, wow, okay. Now I know how you all feel about whores.
Thanks. So she complimented you?
And then when I pointed it out, because I was like, you know what? And that was the second time that night that somebody else was like, or that night said, oh, they try to rescue you like you're a hooker? And I was like, excuse me?
This is why I stay in bed.
Yeah, I had this moment of like, I feel kind of bad because I'm such a recluse and don't go to things unless sex workers are there. And then I remember when I go out,
literally
try to hang out with people that like, they don't like us. And I forget.
No, that's so funny because I actually literally was also just at an event that was like poly sex positive people. It was a mixer for that. And someone asked me what I do, and I was like, I'm going to tell them. And then they were like, so like, when it's going to be bad because they're like stuck on it. Like they're like, oh my God, she's a sex worker. And like, I could hear her like whispering it to her partner. And then like, she asked the classic question of like, what's the worst thing that's ever happened to you? And I'm like, God, I'm going to be here.
That's the worst question.
I'm like, why do you want me to live out my trauma for you? What a fucking weird thing to ask someone.
Very weird thing to ask people. And to ask anyone, it's a very weird thing to ask anyone, but it's yeah, but it's particularly weird to ask that to sex workers. I also find it weird when the other reaction, it's either that or it's like, oh, I've always thought about doing that. I think like I'm pretty enough that people would pay me. And I'm like, that's not actually what it is.
Yeah. And like, also, what, you want me to just be like, yeah, you're so pretty.
You could totally get paid to do this because it's that easy. Like money just falls from the sky.
Yeah. All the conversations with all those things where it's like, oh, I should, like, people are like, I'm in the wrong industry, like I should do it. I'm like, well, it's not that easy. Like you can't just like drop everything you're doing and all of a sudden, like it's like when I started, it took me a long time to get to where I am like making the amount of money that I am. Like I sucked at first.
Like longer than I would like to admit.
Yeah, when I look back, I'm like, ooh.
Yeah. So I don't know. Yeah. All of that is like, that makes it hard. But yeah, I feel like what you're talking about that's happening in Sex and the City, like that all still happens. And I think in just progressive, sex positive, kink affirming spaces are still feel justified in being whorephobic, even if they claim that they support sex workers.
Yeah. And it is this thing too of like, because I think they would call themselves sluts and like whatever. Whereas I think you do have to like pay homage to actual whores, like professional whores. And like, it reminds me, tell me if this makes sense, but it reminds me of when like women come into the strip club and they want to be all supportive, but then they want it to be all about them and they want to get on stage and they want to like take their top off. And I feel like sometimes the sex positive community is like, I want to be the whore. And it's like, well, you're not.
You're not. Yeah. So what was your like, so you said that you wrote the article because you were trying to make sense of that, why you do that. Do you feel like writing the article gave you some insights?
I do think it helps. And like I ended the article and it is accurate that like after I wrote it, I went and bed rotted after.
Mm-hmm.
I do think I felt better. Like I was like, those were some great points, Lana. Like, go to sleep. Because bed rotting also does include multiple naps.
Yeah. I was going to ask you this. I feel like writing is also something that is like very draining. Where I think a lot of writers experience this where like after they turn in whatever it is that they were writing, it's like a huge like drop in like energy levels. Do you feel like it's this, like you have a similar experience with writing?
Yeah. And yeah, that's really interesting because I am like, with writing, I am the same way where I do a few hours and then I'm like, yeah, I need to Great. I think my brain needs a rest.
Yeah. I write a weekly column now, and I find that's like one of the hardest things about writing a weekly column is that by the time I turn it in and I'm like exhausted, I'm like, shit, I need to think of like something to write next week. Like I already have to be like thinking about the next thing. And that quick turnaround gets exhausting.
Very Carrie Bradshaw. Yeah.
I know I have Carrie Bradshaw's job, which is odd.
But also other jobs. I'm like, how is this girl surviving? Just the column.
Is like to me, I'm like, there's no way that, and she was like obviously writing for an alt weekly. Like she like in the opening, she's like pulling it out of like on the corner, and I write for alt weekly, and I'm like, there's no way you live.
Yeah, and she has 60 pairs of Louboutins. It's crazy.
So I'm like, is this a show about sex work though? Like, what is she doing that we don't know?
Exactly. She's like, yeah, horror is so crazy.
Yeah. So do you have anything else going on? It sounds like you're working a lot.
I'm actually, going on is a strong way to put it, but I'm planning on writing a play. I wrote the outline the other day, and it is a sex work adjacent, but there's nothing to put out for it now, but that is.
What do you want? Have you written plays before?
Nope. I went to school for writing for film and TV. And I have some friends who went to the same school for acting and directing and play stuff. So they gave me some plays to read and some advice. And now I think I might be having like a bit of a quarter life crisis. So I'm writing a play.
That's neat. So when you went to school, what did you imagine doing? Did you imagine writing for TV, and have you done that?
I imagined writing for TV. Yes. I haven't. The closest I've gotten is like an interview for a show, and they were like, "You're great," and then it never got green. Like it never made it to the next step. And that's kind of where I was in life before I became a sex worker, where I was like a freelance writer. I was still trying to do TV. I was doing stand-up comedy, and then I was tired of being really fucking broke, so started stripping.
Yeah, that's fair.
I never looked back.
A lot of stand-up comics and sex work.
Yeah, we're all looking for a way to pay rent.
That's fair. It's fair. And there's like, you have some charm, so you might as well use it for higher paying gigs.
Yeah, and once you start getting paid for gigs instead of getting like drink tickets, you're like, wait, what the fuck am I doing with my nights? I will not be going back to the stand-up comedy.
Yeah. Do you still do stand-up comedy ever?
Not really. I haven't done it in, I think, like every once in a while, if like someone, like a friend or a show like I really want to do offers me a spot, I'll say yes. But certainly not at the place I was, which was like weekly, multiple times a week.
Yeah. Okay, so let's say that somebody is going to decide to try out bed rotting who has kind of a mindset, not supposed to do that. What advice do you give them, and what should they take to their bed?
Themselves.
Okay.
Have a good book handy, a vibrator, or your hands. I know some people just like to do it analog, and I totally respect that. That's what I do sometimes when my vibrator's dead. A good lube if you like that. Your laptop or your TV and remote if you want to watch a show. Some lighting. Make sure the lighting is good. Maybe some candles, incense. Make sure it feels cozy and smells good in there. Your phone.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Probably gonna ignore most texts that are coming in, but that's your God-given right.
Yeah. Okay. I like to end every show with 3 questions. So what are you reading?
Oh, I'm reading this book called I think it's Slut Anthologies.
Okay.
Topical. It is quite literally like an anthology series of just essays about all the writers were given the prompt of slut.
Nice. Okay. Who edited that?
It's a great question. I don't have it on me. I literally took it out. Wait, I took it out because I put my pleasers because I'm going to the strip club tonight, so I don't have my book in my bag.
And what are you listening to? Books or music or podcasts?
I'm not on any podcasts right now. Listening wise, well, I mean, I was listening all summer, but I just went to Charlie XCX on Monday, so now I've been revisiting Brat, even though Brat Summer's over, but Brattum, Fall.
And what are you excited about?
You know what? I am legitimately excited about writing a play. I to like have a creative project going on. For listeners, I live in New York City, so I imagine it'll go up in New York City if it ever actually becomes a thing. So stay tuned.
That's exciting. Are you going to write it under Lana Hart?
Probably.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me.
Of course. Thank you for having me. It's so fun.
You're welcome. Thank you for joining us for another episode of When We're Not Hustling. I'm your host, Jessie Sage. You can find me on Twitter at sapiotextual or visit my website at jessiesage.com. The show was produced by Emily Foster and the music is by Benjamin J. Beninati. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Not Hustling Pod. To support the show and get sneak peeks, please go to patreon.com/sapiotextual. For more information about our show and what we do here, please visit our website at nothustling.com. Signing off. Have a great week.